When Steve Harvey stepped onto his own talk show stage that morning, he thought it would be just another feel-good episode, filled with laughs, light moments, and maybe a few surprises. What he didn't know was that someone had planned something behind the scenes. And when a message from Denzel Washington suddenly appeared on the screen, everything changed. What started as a normal taping quickly turned into the most emotional moment of Steve's career. Because in true Denzel fashion, he didn't come with flattery, he came with truth. And what followed became a powerful, unforgettable masterclass in legacy, manhood, and grace. The music blared from the speakers, a familiar beat that signaled the start of another episode. The light swept across the crowd, catching smiles, signs, and phones already raised for selfies. The audience was alive, clapping, laughing, leaning forward in their seats, ready for whatever came next. And in the middle of it all stood Steve Harvey, grinning wide in one of his signature suits, his energy infectious as he strolled across the stage. "Y'all look good today," he said, adjusting his tie and tossing a wink to someone in the front row. The crowd roared. Steve was in his element, loose, quick-witted, playful, dropping jokes like they were second nature. A story here, a punchline there, all of it effortless. "Today," he said, "we got something a little different. We're talking legacy, inspiration, people who left a mark." The audience leaned in, some nodding, others waiting for the twist. Because on this show, even the serious came with a smile. They were expecting something sweet, maybe a celebrity guest, maybe a surprise reunion. Feel-good TV with a touch of Steve's signature fire. He paced slowly now, a little more measured. "We've had some powerful folks walk through here over the years," he said, "but what really gets me is when somebody's journey means something beyond the fame." He paused, letting the weight of that land. The audience quieted a bit, not silent, but attentive. Then he smiled again, breaking the moment like a pro. "But don't worry, I ain't about to start crying up here or nothing." Laughter, some claps. A couple knowing looks from folks who'd seen him get emotional before. This was still Steve Harvey's house, still his tempo, his show. But something was coming, and though no one in the room knew it yet, this episode wasn't going to end the way it started. Because today, the host was about to become the moment. And the moment was already walking its way to the stage, quiet, invisible, but carrying more weight than any joke ever could. The band faded out, the applause died down. And for a beat, it felt like any other segment. Steve stood center stage, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like he always did before something big. But there was a flicker of something different in his face, just for a second, like he could feel the shift coming before anyone said a word. "All right," he said. "We got a special guest today, somebody y'all probably didn't expect." The crowd murmured. Phones raised again. Eyes darted toward the wings of the stage, people whispering guesses. But no one came out. Instead, a slow mechanical hum filled the studio, and a large screen lowered from the ceiling, smooth and deliberate, casting a glow across the floor. Steve turned to look, his brow furrowed slightly. This wasn't in the rundown. "What's this?" he asked, half to himself, half to whoever was listening in the booth. From off-camera, a voice, one of the producers, steady, casual, but carrying something in it like they knew what was about to happen. "We have a message for you, Steve." The audience leaned in. Some laughed nervously. Others squinted at the screen as it flickered to life. A soft fade in. A quiet room. Warm lighting. And then, there he was, Denzel Washington. Sitting in a chair, hands folded, no smile. Just that calm, focused expression he wore in movies, the kind that made people listen. Steve blinked, took a step back. "What is this, man?" he muttered, more to himself now, his voice softer, not playful anymore, more like someone trying to figure out if this was real. The audience gasped quietly. They knew they were watching something, but they didn't know what it was yet, only that it wasn't part of the plan. On screen, Denzel leaned forward and said Steve's name, just once, but the way he said it, with weight, with reverence, froze the entire room. Steve didn't move, not a word, not a joke, because in that moment, even he didn't know what was coming next. But everyone, including him, knew it was going to matter. The screen held still for a moment, just Denzel, seated in a quiet, warmly lit room. No frills, no flashy intro, just a man with presence. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped together, that measured look in his eyes, the one that never rushed, never needed to. "Steve," he began, voice low, steady, sincere, "I don't usually do this." A hush fell over the room. Even Steve straightened up a little, his eyebrows lifting just a bit. The audience shifted in their seats, unsure if this was a tribute, a joke, or something else entirely. "I don't really do shout-outs," Denzel continued, "but there comes a time when you gotta give a man his flowers while he's still here to smell them." Steve smiled, chuckled softly, tried to keep it light. "Aw, man, come on," he said, shaking his head. The crowd laughed gently, following his lead, but something in Denzel's voice made him pause. "I want to talk about legacy," Denzel said, ignoring the laughter. "I want to talk about the quiet impact, the kind that don't get headlines, the kind that don't chase cameras, the kind that just shows up." Steve's smile faltered just a touch. His eyes locked on the screen. "You've been that kind of man, Steve. You've stood tall in rooms that weren't built for you. You've lifted others when nobody was watching. That matters." It wasn't flashy, wasn't dramatic, but it was real. It felt less like a tribute and more like a confession, a moment of one man seeing another clearly. Steve sat back in his chair, lips pressed together now, still trying to wear the grin, but it didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. Something had shifted. The audience noticed. The applause was gone. The energy had settled. Denzel leaned in again, just slightly. "Sometimes we don't know the ripple we cause. Sometimes we don't know how far it spreads. But I'm here to tell you, yours reached me." Steve didn't speak, didn't nod. He just sat there, eyes locked on the screen, caught somewhere between pride and disbelief. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just a message anymore. It was something deeper. Denzel's eyes didn't leave the camera. His tone didn't change. But his words started cutting closer now. "I remember when I was struggling," he said, voice soft but strong, "trying to figure out who I was, what I stood for. I turned on the TV one night, and there you were, talking about faith, talking about purpose, not in some preachy way, but in a way that made a man stop and listen." Steve sat up slightly, one hand resting on his chin now. The audience had gone still. Nobody shifted. Nobody coughed. It was like the room itself was holding its breath. "You said something I never forgot," Denzel continued. "You said, sometimes God don't show you the whole picture, just the next step." That hit me, because I was stuck in that place, waiting for answers. But you reminded me the next step is enough. Steve blinked slowly. The memory seemed to stir something in him. His jaw clenched, just for a second. A man remembering a time when he needed that same advice himself. "And then I heard about something you did," Denzel said, pausing. A moment nobody filmed, no cameras, no spotlight. Steve's brow furrowed. "You were backstage at one of your shows," Denzel said. "A little boy was there, scared, alone, lost in the shuffle. You stopped everything, took a knee, looked him in the eye, and told him he mattered." The audience reacted quietly. No gasps, no applause, just reverence. "That boy never forgot it, and neither did I, because you didn't have to do that, but you did." Steve's hand dropped into his lap. The smile was gone now, replaced by something softer, something heavier. "I know you don't talk about those moments," Denzel said, "but I need you to know those are the ones that define you, not the laughs, not the ratings, not the suits. That." Steve looked down for a second, eyes glassy, lips pressed tight. He wasn't playing host anymore. He was just a man being seen. And for the first time that day, he didn't have anything to say. Denzel sat still, steady as ever, but his voice began to carry more weight now. Not louder, just heavier. Like every word had been held back for years and was finally ready to land. "You know, Steve," he said, "people think you're just a funny man, a talk show host, a Family Feud guy with the mustache and the punchlines, but those of us paying attention, we know better." Steve looked up, trying to brace himself. His hands folded together now, still no words, just watching. "You've been more than a comedian," Denzel said, tone low and unwavering. "You've been a lighthouse for people in the dark." The room fell into total stillness. You could almost hear hearts beating. Steve blinked, slow and deliberate. The corner of his eye caught a tear before it could fall, but his body was shifting, his shoulders softer now, his breath a little slower. "You showed us that being funny doesn't mean being foolish, that being visible doesn't mean selling out, that being a black man in the spotlight doesn't mean forgetting where you came from." Denzel paused, just for a breath. "I've watched you get knocked down, publicly, privately, and I've watched you stand back up every time, with dignity, with faith, with grace." Steve looked away from the screen for a moment, not to check on the crowd, not to reset the mood, just to gather himself. His eyes glistened now. He wiped them quietly with the side of his hand, the kind of gesture that wasn't meant for show, just survival. "Fatherhood, faith, perseverance," Denzel continued. "You've walked all three roads, man. And the thing is, most folks don't know how hard that is when everybody's watching." Steve nodded slightly, not to the camera, not to the crowd, just to himself. Like something inside him finally got heard. The audience sat silent. Even the crew behind the cameras had gone still. The show wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't flashy. It had become something else, something real. And Steve, he wasn't performing. He was feeling it now, all of it. Denzel leaned in just a little closer now. His elbows rested on his knees, hands clasped together. His voice dropped to that register, the one that made men stop talking and just listen. "You helped raise a generation of men like me," he said, "even when you didn't know it." Steve's mouth twitched. His lips pressed together like they were holding something back. A laugh, a word, a sob. But nothing came out. He just stared at the screen, jaw tight, chest rising slower now. "You gave us permission," Denzel said, "to feel strong and vulnerable at the same time, to love God, love our kids, and still walk through the fire without apologizing for the scars." That was it. Steve lowered his head. No dramatics, no noise, just the quiet kind of crying, the kind that comes from deep inside, where the pain lives, where the pride is buried, the kind that says, "I didn't know it mattered that much." His shoulders shook just once. He brought a hand to his face, wiped his eyes again, still trying to keep it together, still trying to host the show. But the show was gone. This was something else now. The audience watched in silence, then slowly, someone started clapping. Not the loud kind, not the hype man kind, just soft, real applause. One pair of hands, then another, then a few more. Somewhere in the front row, a woman dabbed at her cheeks with a tissue. In the third row, a man in a leather jacket wiped his nose on his sleeve. Even behind the cameras, a producer stood still, hand over his mouth. Steve didn't try to speak. He didn't crack a joke to break the tension. He just sat there, eyes red, breathing deep. And on screen, Denzel didn't fill the silence. He let it sit, let it breathe. Because some moments don't need a follow-up. Some moments are the point. And this one had just broken something wide open. The screen faded to black. No music, no applause cue, no lights shifting to the next segment, just stillness. The kind that wrapped around the room like a blanket. The cameras stayed on Steve, center frame, no zoom, no cuts, just him. He sat there in stunned silence, hands folded in his lap, eyes still fixed on where the screen had just been. His shoulders were still, his face soft, no punchline waiting, no comeback queued up, just presence. A few sniffles echoed faintly from the crowd, a cough, a breath caught in someone's throat. But Steve didn't move, not right away. He just let it sit. The silence, the weight of it all. The message, the memory, the love that had just come through a screen and landed like a brick to the chest. Finally, he cleared his throat. Software, rough, real. That was unexpected. His voice was low, raspy, almost like he was talking to himself. Then he looked out at the audience, blinking slow, and let the silence settle one more time before continuing. "I don't even know what to say," he said, pausing. "Nobody's ever said that to me before." He took a breath, long and shaky. His mouth moved, searching for the next thought. "You do this thing long enough. You forget people watching. You forget it's reaching somebody." The crowd didn't interrupt. They didn't need to. This wasn't a moment to fill. It was a moment to feel. And Steve, for once, wasn't the one holding the mic. He was just sitting in it, letting it all catch up. Then he looked up, eyes still glassy, smile faint. But there. "Denzel, man, if you watching this, thank you, from the bottom of my heart." No thunder, no theme music, no clever transition, just a man sitting in the quiet after being seen in a way that left him changed. Steve shifted forward in his chair, elbows on his knees now. No teleprompter, no cue cards, just him, talking straight from the gut. "You know, a lot of folks see this life," he said, "and they think it's all lights and laughs and money and suits. But there were nights, man." He paused, looked down at the floor, took a breath that felt like it had weight behind it. "I remember one night I was sleeping in my car, back of a Ford Tempo, Cleveland, cold. I had $35 to my name, that's it. That was dinner, gas, and hope, all wrapped up in a couple crumpled bills." The audience stayed silent, hanging on every word. I was sitting there, talking to God, out loud, like he was sitting in the passenger seat next to me. I said, "Lord, if you got something else for me to do, just show me, because I don't know if I can keep going like this." His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't hide it. He didn't push past it. He let it sit there, bare and honest. "I almost gave up," he said. "And you know what stopped me? One voice. One person told me, 'Don't quit, just hold on one more day.' That's all it took." He sat back, wiping at his cheek with his palm, no shame in it. "Sometimes," he said, looking across the crowd, "all you need is to know that it mattered, that what you did meant something to somebody." He nodded slowly, voice soft but clear. Denzel ain't had to say all that. He didn't have to go out of his way, but he did, and that right there, he exhaled. "That'll carry me for the rest of my life." The audience started clapping, slowly at first, not because the moment was over, but because it had become something sacred. And Steve, he just let it happen. No showbiz, no script, just truth. And in that truth, he gave everybody in that room permission to be human. By the time the show ended, the internet was already awake. A grainy cell phone clip from the audience hit Twitter before the credits rolled. A 5-minute segment sliced into Reels on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. It didn't matter the platform. The message had legs. "Denzel's message to Steve Harvey will break you," one caption read. "This is how real men talk to each other," read another. Within hours, the moment wasn't just viral, it was everywhere. Trending worldwide, shared by people who'd never even watched the show. Celebrities reposted it, athletes, pastors, teachers, blue-collar dads from Michigan, young men from Atlanta, single moms in Houston. They didn't just watch it, they felt it. Clips of Denzel's voice echoed across timelines. "You helped raise a generation of men like me, even when you didn't know it." Overlaid with slow zooms, black and white filters, dramatic piano tracks. But none of it was hype, it was truth, and people were hungry for it. "This right here," someone tweeted, "this is what we've been missing. Black men uplifting each other. No ego, no flex, just love and legacy. Others chimed in with personal stories, how Steve's old stand-up saved them during hard times, how his motivational talks kept them going after a layoff, a divorce, a setback. One clip resurfaced from years ago, Steve crying on air talking about God and purpose. It hit different now. News outlets picked it up. Podcasts broke it down. It wasn't just a TV moment anymore. It was a conversation about mentorship, about emotional strength, about giving credit while folks are still breathing, about what it means to build something that lasts. And through all of it, Steve said nothing. No big post, no press release. He didn't need to say a word. The world was already talking. A week later, the stage looked different. Not flashy, not loud, just a row of folding chairs. In each one, a young man, high school age, early 20s, different walks of life, underserved, overlooked, but present and listening. Steve stood in front of them, no suit jacket, sleeves rolled, eyes clear. He didn't come to perform. He came to pour into them. "This ain't about me," he said, voice calm but full. "It's about what we leave behind." He walked down the line, pausing with each young man, looking them in the eye, asking their names, their dreams, their struggles. He didn't offer pity, he offered a plan. "You want to be somebody? Start showing up for yourself. Ain't nobody gonna hand you the map, but you can still find your way." He gave out scholarships, internships, phone numbers. But more than that, he gave them presence. That same still, powerful presence Denzel had given him. "This world'll try to break you," Steve said, "but don't let it define you. Let it shape you." The audience watched in quiet awe. No laughter today, no games, just men talking to boys like they were already men. And when the segment ended, there was no big finale, no fireworks, just Steve walking off stage, wiping away tears, not overwhelmed, not broken, just moved. Moved by the moment, by the responsibility, by the full circle beauty of being seen, and choosing to see others. He smiled as he reached the curtain. Because this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of what he was always meant to do. This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.